He was my hero and I was his. We had mutual love, respect, and admiration for the 74 years we called each other brother. David joined our family September 3rd, 1944. We were lucky enough to be the sons of Arthur and Sylvia Landsberg. Our parents, as many of you know, were two people like none other. Never a harsh word between the two of them. They had one priority in life, and that was the happiness and well-being of their two boys. David liked to tell the story of growing up with no middle name. Mom always would call him David Darling, and he accepted that as his middle name. When he was asked his middle name, his answer was David Darling Landsberg. True story. Today, that name is very appropriate because he certainly is our darling. A little guy, like I'm a big guy, David strived to overcome his short stature with accomplishments. A star gymnast, he excelled in the still and swinging rings and high bar competitions. He competed and always placed high in local and state competitions. I attended all his competitions. He called me his biggest fan, and I was. His personality and singing voice landed him parts in school plays and gigs, that's a showbiz term, for all local organizations. He could bring tears to your eyes with his rendition of Eddie Fisher's song, Oh My Papa. When he would come to the line that goes, Oh my papa, I miss him so today, he would replace that with, Oh my pa, I love him so today, because Dad was still with us. If you're unfamiliar with that song, check it out on YouTube. It's sung by Eddie Fisher, and if you're unfamiliar with Eddie Fisher, he was Princess Leah's father. David always insisted on sharing the spotlight with me. When Mom would coax him to sing for her friends, he would hand me two wooden things to bang together while he performed. He would say, Here, Joey, you play the sticks. I became an accomplished stick player. I'm still pretty good at it. He had dozens of friends. Tell me about it. Many who he remains close to today. He was everything I was not. But without an ounce of jealousy, I proudly wore the title David Landsberg's brother. He was a student at Hofstra College. It wasn't yet a university. While there, he majored in partying. He wouldn't be angry at me for telling this story. I would be home in bed late at night. That's what I did. I would be watching the Late Late Show in my room on a little 9-inch black and white TV. We always joked about the time he sneaked into my room at night, smelling like a saloon. He sat down on the floor, and in a slurred speech of one who was very drunk, he said to me, So you're watching the Babe Ruth story, huh? This became a catchphrase for us whenever we needed a laugh. His beloved fraternity brothers who shared these rowdy years have always remained his fast friends. When he was called to serve his country in '66, and shortly after basic training at Fort Gordon Jr., David married his high school sweetheart, Jean. I met Jean when she was 13. I can't tell you what year that was because it would give away her age, and nobody would believe it anyway. I remember the wedding well because as his best man, I had the job of keeping him up from fainting during the ceremony, and I could use him right now. Shortly after his marriage, he shipped out to Vietnam. He served a year at Bien Hoa Air Base in the Signal Corps. This is a funny story he has told me. It was his turn to do perimeter duty. He was sent out with one of his buddies and a very drunk sergeant, along with some small artillery. When loading what was supposed to be a signal flare, they accidentally launched a grenade. After sailing high into the air, it exploded uncomfortably close to them. Luckily, no one was hurt. He received no medals I am aware of, but did rise to the lofty rank of, I believe, private first class. He served his country well. After returning from the service in '68, he and Jean moved to Maryland. He used his GI benefits to graduate from the University of Maryland. After graduation, they moved to New York, where he landed a job at J. Walter Thompson, I believe. He worked there for a year. Then it was back to Maryland again in '71, where he decided to follow his passion, entertaining others. Dinner theater, local TV, kids programming. He once played a slice of bread, partnering up with someone playing a turkey. Together they were, that's right, a sandwich. It was for a program about nutrition on the PBS channel. During this time, they were blessed with their daughter Karen in 1973. He was a hit in Maryland. He said he became a big fish in a small pond. He needed more. He wasn't going to find it in Maryland, so off to La La Land, the Landsbergs went. In California, a new blessing, Danny, was born in '77. In Hollywood, we know there are lots of actors, then there are working actors. He was determined to be the latter. He got work. Once again, he was going to use his 5'2" height to his advantage. He played the Seymours, the Marvins, and the Normans, never the Dukes, the Spikers, or the Rockies. Always the nerdy, that lovable oaf. He got his big break on a sitcom starring Don Rickles, CPO Sharkey. He played Skolnick. Yes, typecast once again, loving every minute of it. The series led to other stuff, special guest spots, game shows, talk shows, most of the rest you know. Movies, TV commercials, acting, writing, directing, producing. He once told me he had heat. I guess that was a good thing. I don't know. For a while, right now I have heat, so. For a while in the '80s, David and his then partner Lauren Dreyfus had an office on the lot of Universal Pictures. On one of my visits to California, he told me to come by the office. I have to say, I was a bit starstruck, and I think there's a few stars in our audience right now, so bear with me. As I drove my rental car up to the gate, the security guard asked me what I was there for, or who I was there for. LDL Studios, I told him. Go right in, sir, they are expecting you. Wow, did I feel special. David always made me feel special. David and Jean's marriage ended in 1987. Jean is happy with her husband, Jim. She will always remain my sister-in-law, who I beat at Words with Friends on a regular basis. In the late '90s, his tenure as executive producer on the Cosby reboot, my family would travel to Kaufman Studios, where it was shot. There was always a taped-off section for his VIP family, as there is today, I believe. I was always welcome to bring along my friends, which I did on several occasions. One of my dear friends, Rick Portes, was a huge Love Boat fan. When David was producing Love Boat, The Next Wave, also a reboot, he told me to send Rick out there. He said he would give him a walk-on with a line. They dressed Rick up in a white dinner jacket, put a lady on his arm. Rick got as close up in his line as one of the cruise ship passengers. I know it was a high point for his life. Rick is no longer with us. My brother David was always concerned about his brother Joe. His generosity had no bounds when it came to me. He called me one day in late '79. Hey, Joey. In my family, they still call me Joey. I just did a commercial for RCA, something called a VCR. There's a new trend out here called video stores. They rent movies on tape, something called Beta and VHS. I think it would work in New York. At the time, I was dragging a tape measure across Long Island in my position as a measure man. That's the guy who comes to your house to measure your floor for new carpet. I'm going to send you tickets to fly out here to look around. After my initial refusal of the offer, after all, who doesn't love the measuring business? That's what I did. I agreed to the trip. After a few days on the coast, he sent me home with 3 VCRs, a portable video recorder, a video camera, and about 200 VHS and Beta videotapes to set up shop. My instructions were, good luck, Joey. Pay me back when you can. It took years, but I eventually did. Many of you know that Home Video Movies became the original video store in Suffolk County and grew to 3 stores spanning a period of 18 years. This was just one story of many. Among others of my favorites is the free trip to Hawaii for Judy and I to attend Karen's wedding. That was very nice. David and I had a great relationship. Other than the spats of young siblings arguing over who gets the bigger room, I did. We never had a real fight or argument. Over the past 4 months, while he was going through the nightmare called chemo and radiation, we would call each other daily. This is going to get hard for me. Most times talking for hours. He loved to talk about our families. We talked about his dear children, Karen and Dan, his daughter-in-law, Candy. We talked about them through his ordeal. When I would go out to visit when the kids were young, I would love to watch David sit at the piano, and you have probably seen this scene too. Karen on one side, Danny on the other. David would be playing a tune as they all sang along. We talked about grandkids, his beautiful granddaughters, Carly, Betty, and Susie. I had to be corrected on all the spellings, by the way. I wasn't lucky enough to be present, but I'll bet that piano scene I described was repeated with his 3 girls many times, in the recent years. How he loved his girls, how he loved them. He loved my family as well. His sister-in-law, my wife, Judy, they would telephone talk sometimes as long as I did. His nieces, Jody, Kristen, nephews, Michael and Brian, who are here, were very special to him as well as their families. He was always proud of their accomplishments. They too would have long telephone talks with him. He was always generous with his time. David and I would talk about our history growing up in post-war Brooklyn. He loved to reminisce. We would talk about our lives as Long Islanders and, of course, Mom and Dad and how special and how blessed that we were. At the end of the call, even though he might be in terrible pain, suffering from nausea caused by the treatment, he would always say to me, "Don't worry, Joey, I'm okay. Take care of yourself." He was my hero. I was his.